Welcome to the Sunday Superversive live stream. I am your host, Benjamin Wheeler, and I'm here with Anthony Marchetta. Anthony, how are you doing today?
I've been worse.
You've been worse. I've also been worse, actually. And I'm still pretty bad, so we'll
Yeah.
continue on. We'll continue
So
on to
that's
joke.
saying something that you've been worse.
It is. It is. Uh, One time I made the mistake of kissing a German girl and got laid out with the worst throat disease of my life. There's no joke.
No, but what the fuck? Okay.
I just
And
wanted
on
you to
that
know that.
note,
So, this is an example of terrible writing advice. You don't just want your characters just vomiting out their trauma about kissing German girls, etc., etc. She was a cutie, all right? She was a cutie. I just kissed her. Don't worry about it. Uh, that's probably the problem. Uh, you don't want to have a character just come out and say the bad things of their lives. You don't want a character complaining all the time. You don't want a character, who, at least not in the way that people normally take complaints. Puddleglum is special because Puddleglum is fundamentally optimistic, and he's funny. Um, I know that's weird saying that Puddleglum is optimistic, but
he
he's fair.
is.
He is. He's
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 too optimistic. The other Marshwiggles notice it. It's a problem.
I know he's neglected by the other marshmallows for saying it will only rain tomorrow instead of thundering, uh, and then taking a nice walk in the weather. But you think we're exaggerating? We're just not exaggerating.
No.
So you don't have a puddle glum. You don't have any of this. In fact, what you do have is a bunch of terrible writing advice from authority figures in your life who you haven't developed the brain cells yet to be able to pick through and decide that they're actually terrible, or if they do have something they actually could offer you in the form of writing advice. Remember, kids, if your teacher hates Shakespeare and it's not a matter of taste, they are being, well, gamma about it. The opposite of sigma, so to say. I don't know if it is the exact opposite. So, Anthony, why don't you tell us this awful, no good, horrible writing advice which was brought to our attention?
Yeah, so this just popped up one day on Twitter, and I just made the comment like, "Pack it up, boys. This is the worst writing advice I've ever seen in my life." I will say that I am A, completely not exaggerating, and B, I genuinely like I really want to be clear. I very genuinely mean that in a one as sincerely as I can make it. This is actually the worst writing advice I've ever seen. Uh like not one of the worst, the worst. So this was the point. I don't know what it's from some sort of social media. It appears
Tumblr.
maybe like Tumblr.
Hmm.
Yeah, maybe Tumblr. My high
Hmm.
school English teacher would often critique our literature analysis work by pointing out, "You're treating these characters like they're real people. They're not, they're characters." And it took me a long time to understand what he meant by that. Because I always thought, isn't that the point? That writers want to write characters to be so three dimensional that they act and feel like real people. But that's not it. Characters are tools a writer uses in service of a story. Of course, characters can be written with depth to the point that they feel real to us. They exist in service of their narrative, something real people aren't beholden to at all. When discussing characters, I think it's easy to accidentally see these characters as real people and not extensions of the author's beliefs, tools for narrative, means of storytelling. Um, I think this is very interesting in some ways, and I will say this because it
Right.
really shows the dichotomy between like what the left thinks storytelling is and what the right thinks storytelling is, right? Like
Hmm.
if you are of the left, I wager there are a good amount of people who read this and go, "Yeah, that's exactly right. Like what's the issue here? I don't understand." Right? Like
Right.
and if you are on the right, I would grok that you probably read that and immediately recoiled, like I did, right?
Yes.
Because you saw it and then said that is the absolute opposite of true. So I will say this: my sister pointed this out in responding to it, and I do think that she has a little bit of a point. So I'll say this much. Um, in terms of literary analysis, there is something kind of there, right? Which is what the
Right.
teacher originally said. What's up?
Right. I'm just putting in vocal noise.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, like there's something kind of there in terms of literary analysis. And here's what I mean. When you are analyzing the story after the fact, there is something to be said for like the author included these characters for a reason, right? Like they wrote it this way for a reason. They didn't just do it randomly. And you need to understand that when you're reading about these characters, like the author made the choice to make the characters the way that they are for a reason. However, even as literary analysis advice, this only goes so far, right? Like, it's true to an extent, but any author who I've ever talked to, especially when you get into longer narratives, who is worth anything, right? Who is even slightly worthwhile to read, they will tell you and they will be completely serious without a hint of irony. They will talk to you about how the characters did something that they didn't expect and was not what they were planning. But they went with it because that's what the character would do, right? So
Right.
even when you're talking about like, oh, but when they did this for a reason, that leaves aside the fact that as the author writes the book, a good writer is going to say, well, I need to make sure that my characters act like real people, right? And that they act in
Right.
character the way that they would act in this situation. Otherwise, my message that I'm trying to get across is not going to make sense because it's not going to be acted upon by people who would really do that, right?
Yes. And it's also something that comes with the verisimilitude of kind of the events in the story itself. Like in something like not necessarily Narnia, but in actually no, Narnia is a good example. A lot of people complained that Edmund just, accepted food and drink from someone who like every single Tumblr, right, is like obviously Jadish, is evil, She comes in with white, she's got a dwarf slave, therefore it's obvious to everybody, that this is a villain. And it's like, what do you mean? Like you are a child from Edwardian, just post Edwardian England, and you're suddenly expected to live in the low trust society that we live in. That how do I want to put it? Like that you're supposed to suddenly understand all the
Yeah,
tropes and the memes that we accept as can't these days. It doesn't work out that way.
Narnia is actually an interesting example for several reasons. And people talk about it a lot. And one of the reasons it's so interesting is first off, because if Lewis has one strength that is greater than all of his other strengths, in my opinion, is that he writes extremely realistic and vivid characters. In right,
Mm-hmm.
they are very simple. They aren't complicated, but that's one of the things that like people confuse, right? A
Yes.
character does not need to be complex to be real or to feel real, right?
Mm.
But what makes this so interesting is that, like, I could sort of see where somebody would take this advice, and this is what I mean. Like, you see it all the time from people who in my opinion, are kind of willfully misunderstanding the story, or at least semi-willfully, or are
Mm-hmm.
not very familiar with it and are kind of shit posting. They'll say things like, okay, so Edmund is a child who was tricked by an adult woman, right?
Yes.
With magic, and then we're supposed to act like he is a moral agent who is fully responsible for his situation, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. It doesn't make sense. Um, And there is a sense where you go like, well, yeah, dumbass, but like this is a children's story.
Yep.
Like what you need to understand when you read this is that just like any other children's story, like it's the same thing with like why, and this is going to be a weird example, but it's absolutely true. Why the first Harry Potter book works in the way that it does, but it no longer makes sense when you reach the last Harry Potter book. The narrative is being taken much more seriously. And then you
Hmm.
read the first Harry Potter book using the same logic as the last Harry Potter book is using. And there's a complete tonal mismatch, right? It makes
Right.
absolutely no sense. Narnia doesn't have this tonal mismatch. It's always in this first mode. And what I mean is
Hmm.
that if you are a child who is reading the story, it is assuming Lewis, the author, is assuming that you, the child, are a full moral agent, right?
Yes.
Now, Lewis, the person, might very well understand that, like, obviously, Edmund in real life, a real child, really in this situation, isn't really going to be, fully responsible. And Peter probably wouldn't be, the literal 12-year-old isn't going to be made king of Narnia either, right?
Right.
Um, but that's not the best decision to be made. That's not
Don't
the point, though.
Anthony.
The point is,
Anthony. He doesn't know what taxes are. He's perfect. He's perfect,
well,
Anthony.
what's his tax policy? Says George
He
R. R. Martin.
he
No,
doesn't understand
um,
what taxes are.
yes, but you get my point, right?
Yes.
Like you have these children. Like obviously, in the real world, this doesn't work, but in a children's book, the children reading the story are like, yeah, he's treating us like we are real, full moral agents, and that's exactly how he does treat them, right?
Hmm.
Because that's how children's books work. Just like in the first Harry Potter book, Harry can go and confront Voldemort, and then they have a line at the end of the book. And the line in the first book makes perfect sense. They go, why didn't Dumbledore stop us? Because they have this conversation where they're trying to figure out what to do. And Harry thinks for a moment and goes, well, maybe he wanted to see what we would do, kind of thing. Now,
Hmm.
in the first Harry Potter book, in the mode that book is written in, where it is very clearly a children's story written for children, this makes sense, right?
Mm.
Dumbledore is treating Harry like a full moral agent, just like the author is treating the readers of the books, who are also 11 years old, right? Like
Yes.
full moral agents. When you reach the last book and you're supposed to take the whole story like it's being treated like an adult story, you go back and you read Sorcerer's Stone. It's Sorcerer's Stone. We're American. God bless America. Um,
Hmm.
you go back and you read Sorcerer's Stone, and it makes absolutely no sense. In fact, it's completely insane, right?
Right.
Like, wait a minute, you knew this was going, like, what are you doing? Why did you let them do it? Also, think about this for a moment. Like, you're saying
Yes.
that 3 11-year-olds can get through traps that were designed to stop the greatest dark wizard of all time. Like,
Yes,
how,
Anthony.
you know,
Dum- Dumbledore was high on his pipeweed. Okay.
yes,
It's more
Dumbledore
literal
was
in
very high. Somebody made a Steamed Hams, but it's the first Harry Potter movie, and it's literally just a shot-for-shot remake of the first Harry Potter movie, but every scene is memes. And that's
amazing.
it. That's the entire thing. Like, I don't even know how to describe it, except that for some reason, 2 actors play Dumbledore, and they're named Dumble and Door, and there's no reason ever given for this. Um, it's just how they do it. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. I think it's amusing. But
It
yeah,
is pretty
like,
funny.
okay, so in that sense, I sort of get what they mean in the advice, right? Because then you go like,
Mm.
oh, well, they're not real people, they're characters. You need to understand that, like, but even that doesn't entirely work, right? Because
Right.
once you make it that the advice that reductive, it turns into like, well, okay, if we're not supposed to treat them like real people, instead just ask why did the author include them acting in this way without considering the answer, well, maybe that's just what they're like, right? Which
Hmm.
is absolutely a valid answer that, again, any good author will tell you. Any good author is going to tell you, oh, the characters took over the story and made decisions I didn't consider, right? Like,
Yes.
now, even in Narnia, if you're doing it like that, like, you're kind of missing the point in some very significant ways.
Right.
So, and in the early Harry Potter books, which are the better ones. they're obviously the better ones, and the reason that they're the better ones is because of this tonal mismatch. Rowling really, it was an impossible task that she had to try and like bridge two completely non-cohering logics where you're supposed to think Dumbledore is like, this morally gray figure, and that doesn't make any sense when you contrast it with like the way he's treated in the early books. Yeah.
Yes.
Um yeah, but even in Narnia, right? Like I'm trying to think of an example here. Like you think of Edmund, right? When you go, well,
Mhm.
why is Edmund like this? They're characters. You're treating him like he's a real person. It's like, right, but the problem is if Edmund wasn't acting like a real person, then nothing about the message of the story would make sense, right?
Yes.
You need to recognize that Edmunds exist and they are real and they will do that. Otherwise, there is no point to Narnia, right? Like, there is nothing that you could say interesting about Narnia. And this is true of all of these stories, right? Like, Wuthering Heights was something that came up, like, in the discussion when people were talking about it, Heathcliff and all of them. The
Mhm.
problem with reducing it to, well, why did the author make them that way is because if one of the answers to that question isn't because people act that way, then the story is robbed of all of its power, right? Like, if there's no real Heathcliffs in the world, if you can't recognize Heathcliff in a person, that there's no Heathcliff that exists in the world, then there's no point to Wuthering Heights. It's not telling you anything real, right? Like you need to be able to recognize that these characters exist. So, and then you get into the real problem with it. In literary analysis, there's at least some usefulness to this advice, though it's overly reductive. But
Mhm.
then the original post takes it into an absolutely awful direction that is just completely wrong, right? Completely wrong. And that's where they say characters are tools a writer uses in service of the story. Um, Tools are and it says that it's easy to see these characters as real people and not extensions of the author's beliefs, tools for a narrative, means of storytelling. A character is not an extension of the author's belief. That is absolutely 100% wrong. It's so wrong, it's like disturbing.
Right.
It actually kind of like makes me shiver and also makes me realize, wait a minute, people actually write like this.
They do.
Like that's awful. Yeah.
Yes.
Characters are not an extension of the author's beliefs. That is an awful way to write characters.
I
Um,
mean, I firmly believe that if Steven Universe was born during World War II, he could have sung all the Nazis' problems away.
Yes. No, somebody made a great there's like an incredible comic that's like Goku like going like they need to go back in time and kill Hitler. And then like Goku goes, wait a minute, guys, I have an idea. He goes, why don't we just rehabilitate him? Rehabilitate him. Then they go, wait, Goku, what? He's like, no, really. Think about it, like Vegeta, we rehabilitated you. You were a genocidal maniac. And he's like, but Goku, he's Hitler. He's like, so how are you any better? It's like, actually, I'm pretty sure you were worse. Didn't you kill more people than he did? And they're like, no,
Didn't
no.
you blow up the planet?
Yeah. And then he's like, no, but Goku, you don't understand. If you don't kill him, he's gonna kill a lot of people. And then Goku's like, oh, I see. All right, I understand. He's like, I have an idea then. He goes, why don't we go back in time and just like bring him to a different time then, and then we can rehabilitate him into a good person. Like, no, but Goku, you can't rehabilitate Hitler. And it's like, I don't understand. You keep saying that, but I don't get why not.
Right.
He's like you go. We rehabilitated Piccolo. He was a genocidal maniac. Vegeta
Literally Satan.
was racist towards all the humans. Like he's like, and we're friends with him. It's like, so yeah, so he's racist. So he killed a lot of Jews. Like, people change. It's like, let's just change him. And then they're like, Goku, no, we're not having a conversation. Just kill Hitler. It's
Please.
great, and it's also, like, dead on and kind of shows the problem in, like, these sorts
Yep.
of stories, right? Like, and just really less these sorts of stories and more the people writing them, right? Like, if you
Yes.
really can't conceive of this as an option, then, like, to be honest, you just kinda don't get it, right?
Yep.
Like, characters are not just tools for a narrative. They're not just means of storytelling. You should be trying to view them, at least to an extent, as real people. Yes, there are exceptions here when there are specific genres, right? Like, and there, or you have certain types of stories. But even then, I would argue that you're kind of warping what a story is. For example, like, everybody knows, it's well known, and you could also use Ayn Rand here as an example. I'm going to use a better example, or another example. Starship Troopers, right?
Right.
I like Starship Troopers. I actually think it's a very entertaining book. Um, it's quite good, but everybody knows, it's not even really a secret, that Starship Troopers can barely be called a novel, right? Like,
Oh, really?
it's sort of, oh yeah, John C. Wright talks about this extensively, and I agree with him more or less. It does have a narrative, but the narrative is secondary to the fact that it's a political tract, right?
Oh, yes,
Now,
yes.
Heinlein, to be fair to Heinlein here, and he doesn't deserve all that much fairness because he was a progressive lunatic, but um, to be fair to Heinlein here, he would often, and like a good author, by the way, and this is another reason that this advice is wrong, he would often advocate for ideas he didn't necessarily believe just because he was trying stuff out, you know. And I think Starship Troopers is more or less in that mold. Like, I don't think he really believed that like a military police state was like the best state of society. It was just him like throwing out the idea and trying to explain, you know, the logic of it, right? Why it would work, maybe. Um,
Mm,
I don't think you could necessarily extrapolate from it. What I'm trying to say, if like you can't necessarily extrapolate from that, and this is what Heinlein really believed, you know. Um,
right, because he was very clearly another sci-fi sex pest by the end of his life.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. Stranger in a Strange Land is an absolutely garbage book.
mm-hmm.
Uh, Truly, like one of the worst books ever written, honestly. Um, Especially for its influence, which is outsized to its quality. But yeah, that thing's complete garbage. But Starship Troopers, even more so, I think. Stranger in a Strange Land is just like a badly written novel. Starship Troopers, I don't even think it's designed really as a novel per se. It barely has characters. Johnny Rico is barely a character,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Like,
Um,
name one thing about Johnny Rico. You just can't.
no. And but I would say that like to talk about it like that is to kind of miss the appeal of the book and what the book
Mm-hmm.
is. It's an ode to the military, right? And to the
Yes.
men who make up the military. From what I've talked to some people in the military, since I'm not in the military, I can't speak on this personally, but from people who are in the military, I've seen them talk and write about it, and they say he gets, what the term I've heard was like, he gets the smell of it right. You know,
Yes.
that they do feel like real military men, and military men tend to appreciate the book. Um, you know, like
I mean, he
there's
was, I
some
forget, was
really
he
great
Navy of
battle
some
scenes
kind?
in it as well, which are
Yeah.
worthwhile. But like the point of the book is for him to go on these like long diatribes of philosophy. So in that sense, yes, you could say in Starship Troopers, the characters are very much proxies to get the author's viewpoint across. Not entirely. There are traces of narrative there, here and there, you know, dotted throughout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that he eventually becomes commander over Zim, who's his sergeant, you know. Um, and that's a whole little mini character arc. His father sees the light and joins the military himself, which, by the way, is the most insane thing in the book to me. I'm like, holy crap, your father's like 50 and joined the military.
Right.
Um, I'm like, that's kind of crazy. But you're even 40 for that matter. Still kind of crazy.
Hmm.
But yeah, like the whole thing is I'm trying to think of how to put it. Like
It's it's
the
it's it's more important in the sort of interpretation of it than it is even for the book itself.
Yeah, exactly. And that doesn't mean it's not worthwhile, but thinking of it as a regular novel kind of misses the appeal and the point of it. You know, same
Hmm.
with like Atlas Shrugged. Atlas Shrugged is one of those books where you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different opinions of it, ranging from it's a work of genius and one of the best books of the 20th century to it's absolute trash and it's unreadable. But I would posit that just like Starship Troopers, you really can't read it as a novel per se. Um, that kind of misses the point of the book if you do, right?
Yes.
Like, it is a tract. It is a tract told in the guise of fiction, but nevertheless, primarily it is a tract.
Right.
But
It's got a 200 page or whatever it is,
speech, yeah.
speech in it, which is
Now,
insane, by the way, because by the way, you know how like 2,000 something words for us is an episode is a no, not 2,000, sorry. 5,000 words is about more than half hour episode of Pinkerton's Ghosts. Uh so a, you know, 200-page speech is several levels of crazy
yeah,
for the
exactly.
length of time the guy's speaking is what I'm trying to say.
You're right. And it's like, with Atlas Shrugged, I think that part of the disconnect between people who think it's brilliant and people who think it's terrible is
Excuse me. Yes.
like understanding what sort of book it is, right?
Mm,
If you're viewing Atlas Shrugged as a standard novel, much like Starship Troopers, it's not really going to hold up. But if you're viewing it as what it is, which is a fairly compelling tract for a certain point of view that is very prescient about the future in certain very specific ways, um, in that way, it does have some value, right? At the very
mhm.
least. Um, so, but what we're talking about right now are exceptions, and there are others as well. You could talk about, for
Right.
example, slapstick comedy, right? Like, that's another exception. Like, nobody really cares if the characters are in any way realistic as long as they're good vehicles for jokes, right?
Right.
However, if we're talking about exceptions right now. When you're talking about the norm, you're talking about you pick up a novel and you're expecting to read a novel, and this is the novel, right? Not something like
Mhm.
Animal Farm, not
Right.
something like Starship Troopers, not something like Atlas Shrugged, none of which, by the way, are necessarily bad, but are all doing something different than a regular novel. Uh, you
Mhm.
are expecting to read a story about a person, not a tool for a narrative, not an extension of your beliefs. A
Right.
character is not an extension of your beliefs, and that's very important. And if you think of the character in that way, you're not going to write him correctly. You're going to write him wrong. For one thing, unless you are writing a one-to-one analog of yourself, the
Ugh.
character is never going to be an exact extension of your beliefs because their experiences will be different, and that will make them react to things in different ways, right?
Yes.
And if you are writing a one-to-one analog of yourself, it is almost always going to be bad unless the point of it is either A, satire, or B, making fun of how much of a terrible person you are. Those are generally how those things work.
Yes.
um,
Like,
so
treating yourself seriously, people can tell. Like, maybe you'll get some gamma bait from, people who are as poorly managed as you, but
yeah,
like, you yourself as a character, like,
that's
in
the
Pink
classical definition of the Mary Sue.
right. Like, if how do I wanna put it? Uh, the connotations from sexual to, sort of how you view yourself are absolutely well, you can bury everything underneath it. Like, if you were to take a character and have them start killing off political people, and you're the character doing it, well, it's very clear that you just fantasize about killing politicians. It's very clear. Or if you look at things like, um, which is it? Yeah, sex romps, where you have a character, who's a wise and silver-haired, fat, pot-bellied male, who likes science fiction, and he gathers considering um, the climate of the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and 2000s and now, who takes a young man under his wing, sexually or otherwise. It's clear you're just doing your fetish shit. It's like, like Hog and stuff like that. It's like, no, this is just evil. People can tell, uh, you're a pervert. Asimov going on and on about older women and what novel was that? Naked Sun, I think. Yeah, sure, buddy. Absolutely. We believe you that this is a natural thing that you're experiencing. Uh, like the whole put yourself into the stories doesn't work out in any way like what uh it's believed. Like some people delude themselves into believing. Instead, what happens is that you create something that's fundamentally ugly to other people. You yourself, as a character, doesn't really bring anything to the table. The character can't be aspects of yourself you wish you were better, like in Stranger in the Strange Land, that one old guy with three beautiful women at his the lawyer with it beck and call. Is clearly just Robert Heinlein living his best life, quote unquote. um that's a more subtle one. Ayn Rand, we mentioned her already. She clearly puts her own philosophies into the mouth of the heroes, who are of course handsome, good men. Speaking a lot about her, even though I understand that she had a very young man as her companion towards the ends of her life. Um, you also have what's another good one? Freehold was is of a similar way, where everyone can have sex and women can prostitute themselves, and there's no soul issue because it's all super libertarian. Um, only for further novels for him to just smash it apart. Because he just wanted to do something cool, which is the right way to handle it now that I've matured as a person. But it's like, but what is it really? I know the author and the life he's lived, he's clearly tried to be that way. But I've also seen him in some quiet moments. It doesn't really bring him happiness. There's a thousand other little things here and there, where it's like, whatever you bring forth from yourself, if it is of your lower appetites, what you want from sex, rather than, say, the enjoyment of sex in a properly ordered state, your fetish is what we call it. That is different than in the higher ordered appetites. The marriage rather than the debauch. You create these things and you put them together, and what happens is that if you keep things to a higher nature, your character, your morals, how everything interacts, you create something better than what you yourself have. Not in the sense of envy, but in the sense of the highness of spirit, closeness to God. If you write a story where a married couple sleeps around, you're not actually creating something of a higher nature. You're just fulfilling your animal appetites. But if you do something weird, but it's like the couple is within non-sin bounds, that might be a fetish or not. But if you submit it rather than to the mere appetite, her boobs jiggle jiggly, like gelatin, or something like that. Whatever rank garbage you want to put in there for descriptors. Uh, he was long and hard, like a flagpole, with whatever flag of whatever country is acceptable to believe in these days. He had a they sell it in most of the liberal colleges as he is a flagpole with a Palestinian flag across it. And then in Israel, it's like, and he had the Israeli flag on his proud flagpole. Yeah, sure, buddy. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. You never accept it. That you understand that this is pablum pornography. No matter what the politics are. Um, but it's of that low nature. But if you have, like, I've read some scenes which have been perfectly cromulent because it's the culmination of these characters and their archetypes, and they're getting married, or whatever the equivalent is. Like it's how do I want to put it? Like it makes sense because it promotes the character rather than describe any particular fetish or being treated awkwardly like it's something that you're forcing the characters to do rather than something that naturally flows from the characters' relationships. Um, the Yeah, it's like the idea that you even have to show anything is almost disgusting. It's too private. It's who knows what it looks like. I know for a fact from some of the things I've read in historical documents and from psychological counseling sessions and all this other stuff that fundamentally two people put together, who are in love and are going to interact, and I'm getting somewhere with this, are going to act different from person to person to person. The things that they are will build up and overflow into the other person. Um, you don't get this close to somebody without, burning each other, quote unquote. Uh, in the same way, if you're writing these characters and it's politics and it's sex, it's um, a moral political philosophy that may or may not work in the real world, or it's a treatise on power and philosophy or advice in war. Like the if you put in, actually I like, my cavalry to be heavily armored at all times, well, that doesn't really work for the Mongols. You know what I mean? Like the situation dictates the content of the work as much as anything else. And the more you submit it to the forces outside yourself, to the inspiration, the better off it is. Where the characters will be their own character rather than a sock puppet for, in science fiction case, a perverted old man or woman who's a little bit too interested into the young. It's a perennial problem of artists being perverted, but the tastes are particularly odious. Nowadays, they don't even have sex; they just hear about men becoming women and then get it. Thank the lucky stars that the Christians lost another one. It's totally sublimated into the satanic. Assuredly, I hate them,
Yes,
Nancy. Mm.
obviously.
They're
Yeah,
ugly
like
too. They're ugly people. I don't
yes.
like it. That's the worst part. That they're ugly.
But yeah, as I think through this advice and what it means, like again, the problem that I have with it too is that when you talk to good authors, they all it, it's very intuitive to a good author that this advice is wrong, right?
Mm,
Like
yeah.
it they don't even really need to think about why it's wrong. It's just obvious, right? Characters are not a extension of storytelling. Like they are in a technical sense, but that's limiting. And again, part of the problem is if these characters don't act like real people, then you're not saying anything meaningful about real life, right?
Hmm.
So that's part of it. But a great example is Miyazaki. There's been, every now and then Miyazaki discourse pops up, and I think the reason the right always seems very uncomfortable with Miyazaki, and that's because Miyazaki is uh of the left, at least nominally, and a genius. And I
Hmm.
don't think that they know how to square this. But this is true of multiple people. China Miéville is of the left and a genius. Mark Twain
Hmm.
is of the left and a genius. It's true of Miyazaki as well. You can be those things, right? Um, Nevertheless, in being a genius and a genius creator, he has much to say about human nature that is profound and accurate. Uh, and part of it is that in Princess Mononoke, that's my favorite Miyazaki film. It still is to this day. And one of my all-time favorite movies. In Princess Mononoke, there's a lot of interesting stuff on like him pitching the movie and the original pitch of Princess Mononoke. In the
Hmm.
original pitch of Princess Mononoke, he describes the ending like this: that Ashitaka and San have a conversation with each other where San says like, I can't be with you. I hate humans. They're cruel and they're, whatever. And Ashitaka says in response to her, that doesn't matter. Live with me. Right.
Right.
That was Miyazaki's original vision for the ending of Princess Mononoke. That San would give that speech, "I hate humans," right? Like, which is very famous and is quoted by Tumblrites everywhere. Um, you know, but Ashitaka would cut her off and say, live with me anyway, love me anyway, because it's still, it's worth it. Now, anybody who watches Princess Mononoke knows that both one of the most praised and criticized things about the ending, and I would argue it should be praised, I think it's the correct decision, is that San and Ashitaka do not end up together, despite the fact that they are clearly in love with each other, right? They are very openly in love with each other. Ashitaka calls San beautiful. San spares Ashitaka, risks her life to save him. They embrace at the end of the movie, right?
Right. Right.
Um, but they don't end up together. Why don't they end up together? Well, San makes it very clear. After everything ends, she goes up to Ashitaka and she says, "I love you, Ashitaka, but," and I'm paraphrasing here, right? I might have the exact words wrong, but like,
Hmm.
"I love you, Ashitaka, but I can't live with humans, right? I
Right.
can't do it." And Ashitaka says, "I understand. I'll visit you in the forest."
Yeah.
And that's just like how the movie ends. Now, what are we to make of this? Well, to me, what happened is actually quite simple and obvious and makes perfect sense. And it's because Miyazaki is a real storyteller and an honest one, right?
Hmm.
He reached the end of the movie, tried to write his ending, and then realized something. The character of San, as written in the movie, would not stay in a village with Lady Eboshi, ruled by Lady Eboshi in
Hmm.
Irontown, right? With Ashitaka. Even if Ashitaka were there, living with the people who, were trying to kill her adopted family, essentially,
Hmm.
simply would have been a bridge too far for this character. She could not do it. She might work with them. She might grow and like there might be growth here, but she simply would not live among them as if nothing had happened, no matter
Right.
how much she loved Ashitaka. Um, this is a very good example of not treating the character like your mouthpiece. If Miyazaki was treating the character like his mouthpiece, it's very clear what would have happened at the end of the movie. Ashitaka would have given that speech like Miyazaki imagined. He would have said, "All of this is true, but it doesn't matter. Live with me." And she would have, right? Like, that's what would have happened at the end of the movie. And the message would have been very clear, right? It would have been a message of reconciliation. It would have been a message about, embracing who you really are and all of this stuff. But Miyazaki didn't do that because he knew that wouldn't have been what the character of Sam would do. Now, this makes the message of the movie a lot muddier, right? Like, what are you supposed to make of this? It's very interesting, actually. Um, and in some ways, it does make it better because it kind of recognizes the real world, right? Things are not so simple. But that's kind of the point, right? You get this more interesting message by treating the character like a real person, right? You get this
Yep.
more interesting message where you go, okay, well, maybe things aren't going to work out exactly. Maybe things are going to be messy. Maybe you won't get a perfect ending like this. But you can only get this when you go, San as a person would not act in this way. Even if that's how I wish she would act, she wouldn't
Right.
do it, right? You have to be honest with your narrative.
And it's hard to do that because you have the things that you
It's
desire.
very hard.
Because it's like, well, actually, I would like, someone, when writing Jack Morrow's, potential love interest, it's like I would love him to have someone nice and traditional and wholesome. And in reality, he doesn't live that life. What sort of woman could handle the fact that her husband comes in, covered in blood and wounds, constantly, you know, um, and may not even want to speak with her from his natural behavior. And it's like, no, well, he needs somebody. The audience wouldn't accept it if it's just like, oh, yes, he's perfect and smiling, and this doesn't bother her at all, and the threat of death doesn't bother her, and the fact that there's literal demons out. Oh yeah, it's perfect, it's fine. Like you might want the best for a character, but in reality, you need someone who's just kind of messed up like him, who gets it. The metaphor the elves use is that God is breeding you like a dog. What kind of character can you develop from that? Um, same with
Yeah,
Violet and Sean and Jim Donovan, and the fact that I'm linking him to Iphigenia for a while. It's like, yeah, you just get the person that works best for your character, not necessarily the best person in a I don't
to
even know
get
how
your
to.
not the person who will best get your themes across, because part of this too is that your themes are going to be shaped by your characters, and again,
Mhm.
this is because like if your characters aren't acting like real people, then you don't have anything real to say, which
Right,
is what makes the ending of Princess Mononoke so brilliant, right? He's
right.
trying to say something about the real world. Okay, well, if you're trying to say something about the real world, ending it with this happy-go-lucky romance is very nice, and there is a certain message there, but it's not as real as what we actually get, right? Like, it
Yep.
doesn't say something as interesting as what we actually get because it's not how people would actually act. The truth is, I think Roger Ebert gets it right. He wrote a review. I know that Ebert is a shit lib. Well known. That's fine. However, I happen to be a fan of Ebert. I think he's a good writer and he is a good critic. I also think that sometimes he's right about things that people don't want to admit. For example, Ebert, I've seen people like our bro JD Cohen. This is not sarcastic. I mean that. JD, we love you. So
Mhm.
I say this with all due respect. Like he's been like, oh, he called like Dirty Harry fascist, and but he, Magnum Force, Clint Eastwood made it clear. I actually think that Ebert was right about Dirty Harry. I think Dirty Harry's a great movie. I love it. Right?
Mhm.
Um, awesome film. With that said, Magnum Force, which is the sequel to Dirty Harry, is a complete contradiction to the ending of Dirty Harry that Clint Eastwood wrote as Damage Control. It is not a follow up that makes any sense. The truth is that Dirty Harry ends with Harry throwing his badge away in disgust after shooting the killer and
Mhm.
walking away. He clearly gave up on the system. He decided it didn't work and left. The fact that he's still working as a cop in the sequel doesn't make any sense and is a direct contradiction to it. Um, it is not a follow-up thing. It's not a clarification of the message. It's a repudiation.
Yes.
And Ebert is correct to point this out. He is right. Um,
Eastwood has never been right wing.
no,
Not nearly as right wing as people say he is anyway. Like he's right for Hollywood. He's not right compared to anyone outside Hollywood.
no.
Uh,
And this isn't to say that I don't like Eastwood. I do
oh yeah,
quite a
he's
bit.
he's great. Sure, yeah,
Yeah,
but
Dirty Harry is a great movie. Even Magnum Force, by the way, is quite good, though. Definitely very leftist.
mm,
Um, but Gran Torino is a very good movie. I quite like it. Um,
sure.
yeah, not the point though. Point being, like when Roger Ebert wrote about Princess Mononoke, and he said this about the ending. And again, I agree with him here. I think he is right.
Hmm.
And he said that one of the things that impressed him about the ending was that San and Ashitaka don't end up together. And he said that's like an incredibly brave decision for Miyazaki to make. He's absolutely right. Like, speaking as a writer, as somebody who has done this, for Miyazaki to make that decision, I honestly don't know if I would have been capable of doing it. I probably wouldn't have. Right?
Yep.
Like, I don't think I would have ended the movie that way. I think he was absolutely right to do it. I think it was the correct decision. But that takes a level of mastery. It's very hard to describe. Like what he did in that ending is so difficult to do as a writer, right? Like
Yes.
it's such a fundamental level of complete honesty with your narrative, right? Because it's not an obvious change. It's not like it breaks the story if they end up together, right? It's a
Hmm.
next level layer of honesty where it's like honesty in how you've written the characters, honesty in how the world's been constructive and how you've done it, and then realizing that being honest to the characters is more important than clarity in the original message you were trying to send, right?
Yes.
Like this is such an advanced level of writing, but it can only be done by somebody who completely repudiates this point of view in the advice, right? who doesn't see the characters as simple tools for the narrative, as an extension of your beliefs. If Miyazaki
Yep.
saw the characters as extensions of his beliefs, he never could have written that ending. Never.
Yep.
Right? And people say this all the time. Like Porco Rosso is another one that's a very honest ending, but Porco Rosso is actually more of a feel-good ending than Princess Mononoke. Of course, most things are. Princess Mononoke is kind of a dark story. But like in Porco Rosso, famously, Fio leaves it somewhat ambiguous if Porco ends up turning back into it, or Miyazaki leaves it ambiguous, though he hints that Porco has turned back into a human after Fio kisses him. Um,
hmm
and
And
then
ends up with Gina.
yeah, and then but then Fio explicitly doesn't tell us if he ends up with Gina. However, if you pay attention right to the scene, you'll notice in the end credits that his red seaplane is in the parking lot of the Hotel Adriatic, which
hmm
implies that Porco and Gina have ended up together, right?
Right.
All of this is done in implication, though, and some people don't like that. I've seen people say this about the ending of Porco Rosso, that's one of the things they criticize. They dislike the ending. Once again, I disagree, actually. I think this is the honest way to end the story.
Mm.
I
I mean,
kind of think it had to end this way. I think a more explicit ending wouldn't have worked.
yeah, it's like with things like Lord of the Rings. It would be a bad thing for him to not to for Aragon, excuse me, or Sam to not end up with their chosen bride. Especially for Sam. Um, there is to be a certain like standard of normalcy that these characters have to go through. Like, why in the world wouldn't Sam, talk to whatever her name is, Goldilocks or whatever, and go like, hey, like he's been through so much. He's been to Mordor, helped cast down the Dark Lord, and you're telling me he wouldn't ask the girl he likes out? That's ridiculous. Uh, or something like in the other way, with Sana and Ashitaka, yeah, but also like if Beowulf had a long, you know, thing about a princess he was marrying, it doesn't quite work the same way. Or something like in the Nightland, where if she didn't where if oh my goodness, I forget her name. It's not important. But if the love
Nani,
Nani, thank you.
Murdath the Beautiful, either way,
Murdath, yeah.
one of them.
Murdath, I think. We'll say Murdath. It's more Elvish. If she didn't revive by the fat force of love in the Earth current, it would be a poor thing. It wouldn't be the right story. It wouldn't be true to the spirit. Um, I'm trying to remember one where the people didn't get together and it was kind of a spit to the face. Um, there's another way around it, like some novels, especially like women bodice rippers. You just never get one chosen. Like things like adventure stories with like Tom Swift or Agatha Heterodyne Girl Genius. Like you're never just gonna choose one girl forever until like the end of the series. Uh,
Yeah, I'm thinking like
I
there are
wish I could
several bad
remember.
examples of this.
Yes.
Pullman is a great example of somebody who gets this totally wrong, right? Like John C. Wright talks
Mm.
about this in his excellent essay in his book Transhuman and Subhuman. Um, how essentially he warps the narrative around, and that's where this advice leads you, right? Like you
hmm
warp the narrative around your characters and you go, because they're not characters to you, they are tools for your narrative, they're means of storytelling, right? Therefore you got to work, whatever you do to them, it doesn't really matter, right? um but then you go into something like, say, The Lord of the Rings. Is another great example, a great example of somebody who is an absolute master, who made a decision that I think very, very, very few people would make, but that time has proven to be the correct decision. Why does Frodo not throw in the ring? I've seen people criticize this. I've seen people debate this. I've seen people wonder about this, right? Frodo makes it to the edge of Mount Doom, but he doesn't throw in the ring. He can't do it, right? Um, that is an excellent example of exactly what we're talking about. Because by Tolkien's lights, like, there is a very clear message you could have sent, the message that Tolkien probably would have agreed with on some level, at least, if Frodo had managed to break free for a moment, right? Maybe have a moment of clarity and throw in the ring, and you could have a perfectly dramatic climax, right? It would have worked very well. Like, maybe he doesn't do it, and then Gollum comes to fight him, and then, like, he sees Sam, and then he suddenly snaps out of it and flings the ring off, right? You could easily
Right.
imagine a scene like that. That would have probably been very dramatic and worked perfectly well, right? Um,
Hmm.
and yet, that is not what Tolkien does, right? Frodo, the hero of the story, as Tolkien makes very clear in his letters, fails. You know,
Yes.
he doesn't do it. He can't accomplish his task. He only succeeds because earlier in the book, he shows mercy to Gollum and but gives Gollum a command with the ring that if he is to harm Frodo, he will be cast into the fires of Mount Doom. So Gollum harms Frodo and then slips and falls into Mount Doom, right?
Yep.
Fulfilling Frodo's earlier boast and warping reality with the power of the ring, right?
Yes.
But accidentally, not on purpose. So why does Tolkien do this, right? Why does Frodo fail? Well, because the way that Tolkien had written the book, Frodo had to fail, right? Like, there is no other ending here. Frodo's just a hobbit. He's just some guy, right? He's not
Right.
even, he wasn't trained for this. He doesn't have any, and for that matter, if he was, it probably would have been worse for him, as we know from other, right? Like, from the way that the
Yes.
story's written. But nevertheless, like, Frodo's just some dude, you know?
Just a little guy.
Yeah, really, he's just a little guy, just a
Just
little
a
guy.
little guy.
And of course he failed. How could he possibly not fail when an angelic being is exerting the full force of his will on him, right? Like, at the
Yes.
moment of decision. Like, obviously he can't fight back against it. Nobody could.
Yep.
The fact that he got as far as he did is already miraculous.
Yep.
Um So Frodo fails. This is a great example of what we're talking about. If Tolkien needs to treat him like a character and not like a mouthpiece for the narrative. Araki also talks about this, by the way.
Mm.
Araki talks about it a lot. It's why we got the ending we did to part 6. You know,
Yeah.
Araki talks like he mentions when he writes a story, he wrote a story of like Thus Spake Rohan Kishibe, where he had to like learn Japanese etiquette rules or something and win by like, overcoming it with Japanese etiquette. And Araki very interestingly writes, like, if I couldn't,
Yep.
I came up with my problem, and he goes, and then I need to come up with a way for him to get out of it. And he goes, and if I couldn't come up with a way for him to get out of it, then I need to have him lose.
Yep.
And Araki's just like very clear about this. He's like, yeah, and if I couldn't come up with an answer, then he would have lost. Because that's just how it goes. And that's why the ending of part 6 is the way it is. He's like, I needed to come up with a way to end the story, but the problem is I'd basically written all of the characters into a corner, right?
Yep.
So I ended the world.
Poochie was like blasting on Kanye West's new album, and you just can't win. You just can't win against it.
Now, I love Coochie. He is one of Araki's going to come out with a new book soon about writing villains, which I'm actually
I
really
know.
excited about because Araki has like 3 or 4 of the greatest villains in manga.
Hmm.
Let's see. We got Dio,
Funny Valentine.
Funny Valentine, Poochie. You might, I don't know if you put Diavolo has a good reputation, even though he's not one of my favorites, but
I mean, he's a little bit all over the place.
he seems to be remembered well. Cars is a lot of fun,
Oh
even
yeah.
though there's not much to him, but he
Even
does the job.
even moments when he's like, I'm just gonna be as silly as everyone else. It still works out.
Yes.
in ways that I don't
For
think
that
people
matter,
quite
3
understand.
all-time great villains is already pretty good.
Yeah,
Uh, Coochie, sorry, not Cars, Dio and Funny Valentine are
yes.
awesome villains. Fantastic.
Like it makes
Oh, but of course I'm missing, like, I knew there was a 4th that we're missing who's very obvious, Kira.
oh yeah,
Duh, yeah, so there's your 4. I knew there were 4.
yeah,
I'm like, "No, I knew there were 4." And I'm like, "Diavolo's okay, you could put him at 5th." Sometimes people seem to really love Diavolo. I agree with you, I think he's kinda all over the place, though I do think he works very well for part 5.
yes.
Um, I don't have a problem with him per se, he's just not super memorable to me.
Mm,
Um, Same with Cars. Cars is good, he does very well in the story, I don't have an issue with him, but not super memorable. Toru sucks, nobody liked him.
nobody
Um,
liked them. It's like
no.
it's like I dig it. I understand. He's part of the manipulative systems of the world around you, and he's a psycho ex-boyfriend or something. I'm not sure,
Yeah,
but
he's
it doesn't
lame,
quite. He's lame. He isn't cool. His ability is overpowered to hell and back. Um,
and the way they beat it was lame too. They were like, "Oh," they Deus Ex Machina a new ability, and I almost feel like, the Office meme where it's like you have Jotaro walk in, he goes, "I Deus Ex Machina the new ability to defeat Dio." And then he's like, "Ooh, nice." And then you have, the big fat guy come in, it's Toru's face. It's like, "I Deus Ex," or no, you have not, Toru's face, Josuke's face, Gappy's face.
yes.
And he goes, "I Deus Ex Machina, the new ability to defeat the villain. Hello, human resources." Uh,
Yeah.
and that's kind of how I felt about it.
Yeah.
But that's because the fight between Jotaro and Dio is masterfully crafted, and like the way that he discovers how the ability works, the way that it still doesn't really give him an advantage, the way that he has to beat Dio with trickery,
Mhm.
um, and not just like, "Oh yeah, my new ability gives me the win." That is, in fact, what actually happens at the end of part 8, and it's kind of disappointing. He's just
Yeah.
like, "Oh, soft and wet, go beyond," and now it
Some what?
explodes.
Yep.
And that's just, and then like he wins the
Like
end.
like the whole thing with Toru where he's using I know this isn't a JoJo stream, but this is connected, I swear.
It is.
And the whole
No, it
thing where
really is though,
it
actually.
is. But like it makes sense when he had Yasuho's stand, Paisley Park, guide the Stoff and Wet bubble into Toru. That made total sense. That was
Yeah, and it was great,
acceptable.
honestly.
It was great. But
Incredibly clever.
like doing it against the Wonder of You just didn't gel in the same way. Um, and what was up with that airplane? The anyway, we could complain all over and over and over again about it.
And
Um,
part 8, don't get me wrong, very, very much had its moments.
oh yeah,
Honestly, some truly outstanding things,
like the characters actually did do quite well overall with the choices that Araki had to make him do. Like
Yes.
the head of the household doing what he did, and Jobin being the kind of villain that he was. Like, yeah, no, it made sense. Jobin was a striver. He made bad decisions and brought his son in to make these bad decisions and other things like that, even though how do I want to put it? Like he had a loving family. Well, because he had that greed in him, that desire for something more that uh, kind of affects everyone, really. Um, it's how do I want to put it? I can't believe I grabbed that one. Uh, the characterization that Jobin went through was perfectly acceptable, and his death was justified. Like it's one of those things where the villain almost not being a prancing sissy of some kind hurt it more than the silent menace of Toru, who really all he did was stand around and let people just die around him thanks to the wonder of you. It doesn't work out. Like the villain of part 9, who's the CEO of the company. having to rebuild his family's like wealth and assets after losing the mystical artifact, or needing to revive the mystical artifact that gave him this power, makes a ton of sense. It's a fantastic set of motivations, as well as the implication that there's a third group trying to take it all from him, while the heroes are also trying to take it all from him. Uh, it has, you know, something to it that these characters can work and bounce off each other and stuff like that. Um, and in a way that, how do I want to put it, like proves Araki's mastery, because it isn't just how do I want to put it? It isn't just some sort of random mash together of things he wants to see. All the characters are cromulent to their environment. They're people involved in the low level drug trade of Hawaii. So they, are sort of banded together, but they don't trust each other, and they're kind of violent. And then the guy has goons who do things for him. Uh, part of the network, and the bigger organization, because it has institutional power, uses institutional power that the main bad guy thought he had. Like all the characters, even if you don't like them uh as much as you might want to think, or you wish that he put some effort into some of the characters, um especially some of the hero team side ones. I almost fell in the game. It just kind of it kind of puts together it's like some watching somebody cook. You're not quite sure what they're trying to put together, but it does look tasty. It does look like it could be real tasty, because you have the villain and he's got realistic motivations, even if he's kind of an unrealistic playboy kind of person. uh, you have the hero who has his own motivations, and then you have just kind of everything else swirling together. And it could turn out really great depending on how some parts of the villain and heroes and characters turn out. Or it could just be kind of garbage, worse than Tobin. Toru, excuse me. Um, that, it just creates an unpleasant feeling in your mouth, like that guy. And I'm not even sure how to fix him. Um, like, do we make him more flashy, more arrogant? uh he's perfectly confident in Wonder of You, so it's not like he isn't confident. Like, do you make him more about the institution of things rather than have his stand embody, like, societal misfortune? Like, it doesn't quite work out, but we should probably have it for a different stream after I've reread part 8. I would like to talk about it more, because I think it is something that's worth talking about, say, for in the same way that we're talking about this.
That's fair. I do think part eight's worth talking about. We could have another JoJo stream. We haven't had one in a while. I
Yeah.
really should catch up on part 9. I stopped reading it, but like for no real reason. It's not like there was anything wrong with it. I just kind of forgot.
It's gotten pretty
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah,
They try
I'm
to
sure it is.
they try to scam the owner of the company by pretending to be bank managers, and how do I want to put it? They basically, the plan is almost working, but it's kind of falling apart based on who has the special artifact at any given time. Uh, it's interesting. It's interesting.
Yeah, part 9's kind of a weird one. I will say that I kind of don't like this version of JoJo where he's just not heroic at all. Um
Yeah.
that just sits wrong with me. Like
Yeah.
part 7, you had a JoJo who wasn't heroic but who grew into being a hero, which was really interesting and one of the reasons part 7 is so beloved. Part 8, I would argue that Gappy was absolutely heroic. Yes, he
Mhm.
did some morally gray things, but
Barely.
always with the correct motivations and
Mm.
generally with a heroic bent. Um, in fact, I would say he was an extremely straightforwardly heroic JoJo.
Yeah.
Probably more so than even Jolene.
Oh, yeah.
um,
That's not hard, though. That's not
yes,
hard.
Jolene, my second favorite JoJo to Joseph. Um, But yeah, I don't know. I just prefer my JoJo to be a hero. Having Jodio like them all, I understand that there is such a thing as like a morally gray story, and that's a perfectly valid sort of story to tell. And it's not like Araki's baiting and switching. He was very clear about what sort of story this was from literally like
Hmm.
the first line. So I don't have like a problem with it per se. Like I don't have a problem with Araki doing it. I don't like it.
Right. Honestly, it's not right. It just isn't as fun in some regards
Because
as
it's
other
like,
things.
who am I rooting for, right? Like,
Right.
if Jodio wins, like, why do I care? You
His
know,
name is Joe Dio. I dig it, Araki. I understand. I
yeah.
get it.
Yeah, he already like Araki likes to play with this sort of thing, but it's always been with heroic characters. Like, oh, Giorno
Mm,
has a dark side. Like, right, okay, but Giorno was always working towards a heroic goal, right?
right.
Ultimately.
He
Um,
didn't. He scammed men, but he would never touch a woman or something like that. It's
And it was even more like, why was Giorno doing all of this? Well, to help people, ultimately. That was
mm,
and it was very clearly that was actually why he was doing it. He was, like you could root for Giorno.
hmm
Jolene, you could root for Jolene. She was in jail for a crime she didn't commit. She was trying to save her father, and then she was trying to stop Pucci from doing whatever weird ass shit Pucci was trying to do. Um,
yeah,
yeah. Like you could have root for Jolene. Of course, the other JoJos are very straightforwardly heroic. There's really nothing, right? Like, but he would play with like, oh, but this is a different JoJo who doesn't play by the rules. But they were always heroic, right?
right.
Um,
And they
the
all
only
didn't
time,
play by the rules. The only one who was purely heroic was Jonathan.
yes, Joseph was was a trickster, but again with good motives. Jotaro was an asshole, but with good motives. Um, Josuke was kind of a hybrid between Joseph and Jotaro. I don't even know. I don't know what you would call Josuke. Just kind of a weird guy,
He's just kind of a weird guy.
but he's cool. Don't get me wrong. This is not a criticism of Josuke. He's a good character, but
Mm,
um, I'm not gonna criticize my boy Josuke, but um, yeah, he's perfectly fine, but very clearly heroic, right?
yes.
Like, and even when you get to Johnny, like, yeah, Johnny's not heroic, but that like the whole point of Steel Ball Run and what makes it so compelling and interesting is that Johnny becomes a heroic character thanks to his friendship with Gyro, right? Like he
Yes.
slowly grows over the course of the story. It starts off as the very selfish story of a man who just wants to walk again. And then it turns into he has a chance to, get his friend back and get what he wants. But ultimately, he realizes that Valentine is a bad person who is not going to fulfill his end of the deal and is going to do bad things. And he stops him. And then he gives up on the race to try and stop Dio. He fails.
Mm,
Um, he fails and is nearly trapped in like an infinite loop of forever until Steel rescues him. But whatever.
yeah.
Uh,
Like Lucy
the point
Steele is
is that
is
he gives up winning the race, right?
yeah,
He gives up the prize in order to stop Dio. He has, but which means by the end of the story, he has turned into a true hero, right?
yes.
That's the whole point of Steel Ball Run. And in part 8, again, I would argue that Gappy's funny though because he is from Japan.
Yeah,
Um, Gappy
I
is very
approve.
straightforwardly a hero, right?
Yes.
Like honestly, he's probably like one of the less controversial ones that we've had in a while.
Mm, almost as heroic as Jonathan himself.
Yeah, close. He does do some kind of morally questionable things, and you're supposed to sort of get the oh man, he's a wild card sort of vibe from him. And I
Right.
think you do. Like, I'm not criticizing Iraqi here. I do think it works. Um, right? Like, no
Yes.
criticism. Gappy's a good character. I like him. Um, but nevertheless, he is a very heroic character, right?
Mm,
Like he treats Yasuho like gold. He's honestly like always trying to get along with his family. His enemies are the rock people who are just straight up evil. You know, it's very rare that he does something for just for personal gain, and nothing else. Right? Like
yes.
I'm sure you could find examples of it if you dig through the whole manga, which is pretty long, but like it really doesn't happen very often.
No.
He's a pretty selfless character. You know. Now, will he do some like gnarly things occasionally? Like, engage in a little light torture by when he makes Yasuho look the other way? Sure. Uh every
Yeah,
now and then.
so you look over there, punches him,
It's
and she's
pretty
like,
funny.
"Huh?"
It's a great scene. He's like, hey, Yasuho, what's that in the distance? And he goes, huh? And then he just like hits him with a hammer. It's just like, and he's like, no, never mind. I must have seen something. Uh, but yeah, like he's a very heroic character. Now we're in part 9 and we don't anymore, man. Like,
I'm not really rooting for Jodio at this point. I'm
and
kinda
like,
I'm kinda rooting for the guy who might turn out to be the evil villain, because he's experiencing some actual character growth.
and again, this is not really a criticism because you're allowed to tell stories about bad people, and they could be very interesting stories, and you could
Mm.
have interesting things to say. And Araki's not pulling a bait and switch or anything. He made it very clear from the first chapter when Jodio explained his motives.
When Jodio was selling drugs to kids.
Yeah, right. Like, and even when Jodio tells the story, like one of the problems I have with part 9 is that I know where it ends, and I don't like Jodio, so I'm like, I don't want it to end this way. He's like, "This is the story of how I became." It's a very funny opening. Don't get me wrong. He's like, "This is the story of how I
Mm.
became absolutely filthy rich." He's like, and I mean like unbelievably rich, so rich you wouldn't believe it, not just like a little rich. And that's just how the story begins. Like, okay, so this is the type of story we're getting,
You're right.
but
I
like
mean, there's a
that's great and
certain
all, and I appreciate that Araki is being upfront with me, so I'm not, like, being misled by
yeah.
it, but at the same time, I'm also like, "Yeah, but I don't really care if Jodio becomes rich because he's a dick."
Yeah.
And it's like, who is
Yeah.
he fighting here that I'm, like, rooting for him? Like, Jolene has a lot of very compelling parts to her character. Sure, she's kind of a bitch. Sure, she's, like, kind of unlikable, but,
And horny.
she has that JoJo-ish charisma, right?
Right.
Like, that makes you wanna follow her, and also, she has that relationship with Jotaro that's very compelling, and she has that fighting spirit that's very compelling, there's a
Yeah.
lot of reasons that you could follow Jolene. You could be like, yeah, this is a character I can get behind, right? But what is there with Jodio? I don't really know,
Yeah.
right? Like
It's one of
there's the
those.
fighting spirit, I guess. He has the JoJo fighting spirit, but like what's that in service of? It's in service of like getting rich.
Absolutely filthy rich.
Absolutely filthy rich. And again, to be clear, Araki was honest that this is the type of story this was going to be. And like, it's not like he's not giving me what he told me.
Yeah, it's like one of those things
That's
where
me
it's like,
understand. Like,
you hear something unpleasant from somebody you hate, and it's like, yeah, I mean, he said he was an honest man, you know? Uh,
right, exactly. Like
and honestly,
Araki's. It's just that I'm finding it very hard to like care about what's happening to these characters. Or it's like, oh no, Jodio's gay, possibly transgender. It's not clear. Brother might die.
right, well, no, you see, he can change his stand to, maneuver his body around so that he becomes a woman. Uh, his dick's still there, though.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's fucking weird,
the cop
and
was molesting him
I don't
very
like it.
carefully.
I actually
But
really, really dislike this character for the same reason that the left loves him,
mm,
which is like
yeah.
I don't real I'm like I don't really get the point of this. Like, what are you trying to do here with this character? Like,
Well, there's a
why did you make the choice to make this character the way that he is?
there's a scene in the one of the more recent chapters where he burns down a school bus with the bitches who are making fun of his
I
butt
remember
brother,
that. Yeah,
but then he, like, saves a parrot, and it's like, no, he just put, like, 20 kids in danger, and I understand that he's also a child, and this is, like, the awakening of his stand or whatever, but it's like, no, unlikable. However, I will say something, this is actually fantastic character writing. We just don't like the character.
oh, it
Uh,
is. Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is amazing character writing because what you need to
it's worth
understand about
talking
Araki.
about.
Yeah. with Araki, the dissonance is very much intended.
Mm,
This is not like he 100% knows what he's doing in this scene, right? Like
yeah.
this is not Araki like betraying the story to make some sort of point. He is absolutely being like, there is dissonance here. You're supposed to feel uncomfortable with what just happened, and now you got to live with the character. You're
Yep.
absolutely right. This is amazing character writing. Like, it is such a good way of like showing us who this character is. Araki just tends to be very, very good at that.
Yeah.
And like, you're absolutely right. So I'm not, again, it's hard for me to criticize it so much as just go, yeah, like, I don't like it. And I could criticize it on a moral level. I don't really get what Araki's trying to do with this character. Like, and if
Mm,
he's trying to normalize transgenderism in some way, then I think that that's evil. Um, and I hope that's not what's going on here, but it might be.
yeah. It's, you know, he never strikes me as shitlib or, the Japanese version of shitlib, which is still more
No,
right
he's
wing.
definitely not.
So, but it's like it's still he's going for something that doesn't quite, whether somebody gave him some bad advice or if something's going to happen. Because one of the things with a good character is that they do grow. Does this person, how can you grow the brother of Jodio, Cujo or whatever his name is? um where do you go with that? Because there's several different ways you could go. Acceptance of who they are, going deeper into their psychosis, um, some sort of third thing that I just can't
Right.
think of off the top of my head.
But the big problem is that I feel like Araki doesn't see it in the way that I do, and the way that I
Mm,
do is accurately, which means he can't bring the character in the direction he should go, like you're saying,
right.
which is either to healing or deeper psychosis.
Mm,
Instead, he will see it as some sort of empowerment angle. Um,
yep.
or possibly he just won't go there at all, and we'll just see this as a guy, right? Like, which I think
Yeah.
is also very possible.
Well,
Um,
and also the fact is that there's no guarantee you won't just kill him. Excuse me.
yeah, that's
Uh,
also very possible. It absolutely might
he has a
happen.
history of it. He killed Bruno Bucciarati. Uh,
He did. Rest in peace,
and
King.
right in Narantia. Uh, he put a lot more characterization into those guys than he ever has done so far with. Actually, no, I guess he gave kind of equivalent
No,
characterization,
he did.
but
He gave him a lot of characterization.
mm,
However, I will say this, which is, I'm trying to think of how to put this, and it's hard for me to express it properly. Like, yeah, part of the problem is if I don't know what sort of story Araki is going to tell. And here's the thing. With other writers, I think I would be a little bit more afraid. But Araki is such an original writer that I do have like faith that he will zag when I expect he will zig, and we're not
yes,
going to get like the typical story with him. Like, I mentioned like I'm worried he's going to do some sort of empowerment thing. The thing is, I don't think he actually will. Right? Mostly
right,
because I don't think Araki is a hack, right?
right,
Like, that's the hack thing to do. However, I will say, and I do think that Araki did do this from what I've seen, from what I read in the chapter, and I do kind of not like it. He did that thing where it's like, the meme that's not really a meme was an actual comic panel, but that got memed into hell because it was so bad. That's like that's like the Joker going, I might be a genocidal maniac, but I'm not a racist. I'm not a Nazi. And it's like, but this is like actually the problem, right? Like, you
right,
literally consider racism worse than being a genocidal maniac, and it creates this values dissonance with people, right? I
right,
do sort of see like he did that thing where you're supposed to be like, oh, Jodio really loves his brother. Yes, he's a very flawed character, but this sort of love that he has for his brother is like a kind of counterbalancing thing that at least can make you respect him, right? Like, you can
right,
at least respect it. Only I don't, right? And not because,
right,
like, yeah, of course you should love your brother, but like, he's enabling him in his psychosis, right?
Right.
Like, and I don't respect that. I actually think that that's really fucked up. So I'm seeing Jodio going like, "Hey, you call, why are you doing to my bro?" And it's like, okay, yeah, I get that he's defending him from people who are like abusing him or whatever, but if he really loved his brother, he would be like, you know what would stop you from getting abused is if you weren't such a fucking freak. Like, um,
If you didn't have your the thing's moving fast.
if you didn't implant breasts into yourself like a lunatic, right?
Using
Like,
your mystical power,
you're
which we otherwise
insane.
use for drug deals. If
Yes.
you,
Well, no, he literally mentions like that he got surgically implanted breasts or
I
something. And it's
thought
like,
I
this
thought
is
he
insane. And I don't consider it any sort of like redeeming quality that Jodio accepts this. I actually consider, and the problem is, I do think Araki does.
mm,
And that I do have a problem with.
maybe he is just a shithead.
Now, Araki's not a hack. So I don't think we're going to get the typical empowerment angle story here, right? Like, I
Right.
think we're going to get something much stranger. um,
a
and
bizarre a bizarre
yeah,
adventure for
bizarre
him.
even. And I can appreciate that, right? Like 100%, but nevertheless, I don't know, I don't like the character. You're right though, that scene in like a vacuum is brilliant characterization, right? It shows sort of the
Mhm.
mental level that this character is on, and as long as you intend it, right? Like, as long as you're consistent with it, and I think he will be. I think Araki is willing to kind of eat this. In some ways, he's kind of Fujimoto light in this way, right? I'm not saying that's not fair. I'm not saying he's Fujimoto light in that they're very different writers. But what I mean is, much like Fujimoto, they both have this thing where it's like, I do believe them if they do something really bizarre, both of them, right? With a character, I trust them as writers to see it through. You
Yes.
know what I mean? Like, I don't think they're gonna walk it back, and that's a very common thing with shonen, especially. Like, My Hero Academia has this bad, Hunter x Hunter had this bad, um, Yu Yu Hakusho, right? Like, shonen could get this kind of thing bad, where they don't see, they kind of don't see things through. They'll make big changes or have wild things happen,
Mhm.
but then they'll like walk back the consequences. The big one was like, I remember almost laughing about it. Deku loses his arms in the final, in the fight
Yep.
with Shigaraki, and then like 2 chapters later he has his arms back, and I think I literally burst out laughing. And like, you weren't supposed to laugh. Like, Horikoshi was trying to tell a story, but I'm like, I'm like, what was even the point of that shit?
Right. Like, he
Like,
has robot arms now. He can't hug his
they
child
weren't even
anymore.
robot arms. Like, it was like Ares Horn rewound them, I believe. And I'm
Oh,
like,
oh, really?
okay.
Oh, yeah, that's stupid.
Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, okay, thank you. Um, or Bakugo. There's a reason, like, a lot of people don't understand, like, why was everyone so angry at the fake out death with Bakugo and with him coming back? Like, people were pissed at the time, and I was one of them. Like, obviously, I'm not a lunatic, so I wasn't like, writing death threats to Horikoshi, but I was very much in the camp of like, this shit's stupid. Like, why are we doing this? Well, the reason that everybody reacted that way is because there is not a man alive who thought Horikoshi was going to kill Bakugo, right? No one on planet Earth thought that Bakugo was going to be killed, right?
Yep.
Like, it wasn't going to happen. Everybody knew it. So when he faked out Bakugo's death, nobody believed it, right?
Right.
Like, it's the same thing like with Horikoshi and with Araki. When they do something like that, I am more inclined to believe we're going to actually see the implications of it in practice, right?
Yes.
Like when Fujimoto has, the world fucking end, I'm going to be like, okay, we're living in the apocalypse now.
Yep.
That's the story. When Araki has, like, I don't fucking know, like, oh, everybody dies at the end of part 6. Sure, he kind of rewinds it, but they're like, there are now
They're
very
not the
permanent
same person.
consequences. Yeah, there are very permanent consequences to what just occurred, right? Like, the world has fundamentally changed in extremely significant ways. You know, uh, or Bucciarati, like Bucciarati dies. Like, yes, he comes back temporarily because of some bullshit, right? But like, nevertheless, I trust Araki to be like, Bucciarati's gonna die, right? Like,
Yes.
he is gonna be dead by the end of the story. He's not coming back. That's
And
even why, like, it even allows Araki to do things like fake people out because he doesn't do it normally, right? Like with
yep.
Okuyasu. The reason that Okuyasu's return hits really hard, and it does, by the way, that's like a tear-jerking moment in the story.
Yes.
Honestly, it's great. I love it. But the reason it works is because I 100% believe that Araki would kill Okuyasu,
Yes.
right? Like, I never, with Horikoshi, it doesn't work. It doesn't work because I know he's not going to kill Bakugo. With
Right.
Araki, it works because he would kill Okuyasu. So when he doesn't, it really hits,
Mm.
right? Like when he does and give this one exception, and it's really just the one, right? Like
Right.
it really is not a thing that Horikoshi normally does, you know, or not, sorry, Araki normally does. Like it really hits hard. Like when Okuyasu shows up again, you genuinely feel like, yeah, man, he felt dead to me, right? Like I
Yep.
really thought bro was gonna die in this scene. So it hits very hard when Okuyasu comes back. It's very emotional. Uh,
And it's explicitly like the power of friendship, the thing that they've been developing between each other this entire time. Like, and it's like he was, in fact, even in the story he tells, he's like, yeah, I was going towards the light. My brother was there and everything, and then my bro's like, hey, actually, you got to go back, dude. You got to help your
no,
friend.
no,
What
it's
wasn't
it's
it?
actually it's really beautiful. I love it. It's actually like
Well,
unironically, I honestly love this bit of writing. Like this whole
yes.
bit from Araki. It's so good. Okuyasu meets his brother, and his brother says, no, you have to make the decision.
Oh, yes.
Which is why it's so great because Okuyasu is always making decisions. He doesn't think he's smart enough. So he's always making decisions based on what someone else does, either his brother, and then he gloms onto Josuke, right? And just does whatever Josuke says. So he meets his brother, but his brother doesn't make the decision for him. He says, you have to make the decision. Do you want to go towards the light or go back? And Okuyasu chooses to go back. It's great. It's so good. Part 4 is extremely, in my opinion, it can be really hit and miss. I think that some of the like slice of life stuff doesn't really land very well. Some
Yeah.
of it does. Like the Italian restaurant sequence is awesome, but some of it doesn't. However, when it does
Right.
hit, which is the Kira sequences, um,
Mm.
the Kira episodes are absolutely top tier, and the finale of part 4 is among like the best in JoJo. It's absolutely fantastic. It's such a great final fight between Josuke and Kira. Uh, the ending of part 4 just works really, really well, and I think in some ways it kind of salvages the whole part, right? Like it
Hmm.
that seems a little harsh because it's not like I ever thought it was bad per se, but it leaves me with very fond memories of part 4 when I would probably just be like, "Oh yeah, that part. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it's fine." But
Well,
instead, I have like very fond memories of it. Of like, "Oh yeah, the Kira stuff. It's great. Kira's awesome."
yeah, I mean, and quite frankly, it is Kira that makes it. Good
It is,
characters make the story more than anything else because it's like, oh, it's
and
just a
that
slice of life, silly little town with a bunch of stand users for no reason, and then it turns into actually something with a bit of menace, a bit of soul.
mhm.
Um,
And that goes back to what we're talking about to bring it home again, right? Like
mm,
the way that the reason that this advice is so bad, and Araki's a great example of why, so is Fujimoto, right? Like, is that you can't view the characters as vehicles for telling the story. The characters are not vehicles for telling the story. They're the things that make the story happen, right? And they need to be real, or nothing that you're trying to say matters at all. Araki understands this incredibly well, right? Um, he's very honest with his characters. So is Fujimoto, right? Um,
Mm.
It's not so much that Horikoshi isn't. I actually I have great fondness for My Hero Academia, and I have much admiration for it as well. It does many excellent things, but it does falter in this way sometimes, right? Like
Mm.
in its handling of the characters, and sometimes it does incredibly well with it, like with the Endeavor stuff. I think that is masterfully handled. I honestly think it's gorgeous writing. Like it's really nuanced, really hits all of the subtleties of like how you handle relationships like that, right? Like and he plays it all extremely carefully. And it's great. But you know, you you got to kill your darlings, I guess is how I would put it, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to kill your darlings.
Yeah.
And that's very good right, and that's very good writing advice. You know, you can't you can't indulge with your characters. Bradford Walker's right. Second Story's new video on fan fiction's detrimental effects on storytelling and media literacy talks so much about this stuff. She's absolutely right. The video is all about how people look to characters to try and like fulfill some sort of specific need for them, some sort of psychological need, instead
Mm.
of doing what is right for the story. And that's what this advice really is, right? No, you can't. You need to view these characters as tools that are extensions of your beliefs. They're a
Right.
means of storytelling. They're not means of storytelling. They are um, what the character is part of the, like it's all a part of the story. You can't separate it out in that way, right?
Mm.
A character is not a tool. If you're an author and you're creating a character, I've had this discussion before, and Dorothy L. Sayers talks about it a lot as well. Characters have free will, right? A well-written character has free will. And I mean that like seriously. You can't make the character react in a way that doesn't fit who they are. Otherwise, people
Mm.
will call you out, right? They will say, no, the character wouldn't act that way. They have free will. This is how they would act if they were choosing how to act, right?
Yeah. And readers will know. Readers
Readers
will
will know.
feel it. They'll see it. It'll stand out to them in ways that will ruin their experience of your story, lead to bad reviews. There's a while we were talking, there's a post from some social media site, I'm not sure, where it's a anime girl in clown makeup as the PFP, so you know it's good. Rock Lee versus Guerra went so hard and was so memorable and unintentionally tricked an entire generation into thinking Naruto's underlying theme was effort and hard work ultimately triumph over natural talent. Naruto was, in fact, not about that. It was the opposite, in fact. I dare people to name a single character trait that isn't of like most of the characters in Bleach. You can't. You can barely name them in Naruto. One Piece, of course, the Chad that it is, does have interesting characters, but sometimes they're Frankie and Brooke are a little bit one note comparatively, but not in a bad way. It's just, they're perverted, but it's more than
Yeah,
what
I
most of
really
these
hate that
people.
character archetype, I'm afraid. It does kind of work with Sanji, but it works with Sanji for very specific reasons. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Sanji is like there's a specific way that he's written. First off, his like lechery is weirdly chaste. That's part of it.
Mhm.
And
Right.
second, it's so easily manipulated that it's neutered to complete harmlessness,
Yes.
and that just makes it funny. And I do laugh at Sanji, but
I do laugh at Brooke sometimes. Frankie, I don't know. Sometimes it doesn't hit me.
this is
There's
why, by the way, I do not like. I am in the minority. I know. I really dislike Netflix. Nami. I hate that character. Sanji's okay. They do
she's not
fine.
hot enough.
No, that's not the problem. The problem is she's not Nami in
That's
any
the problem
meaningful
to me.
way.
She could be hot
She
as
doesn't act
hell.
like Nami. Her
Yep.
character is not Nami. Nami
Yep.
is meant to be cheerful. Nami
Yes.
is cheerful, and and Nami is Like she's the sort of person who will kick your pocket and smile at you while she's doing it. And they made Nami like a fucking grump. Like the whole point of like the
The
reason that
average
Nami and
millennial
Sanji's
woman.
relationship works is that Nami doesn't care that Sanji like feels that way about. Nami doesn't care that Sanji's in love with her or whatever. In fact, Nami can use this,
With
and she does,
a
and she
smile.
loves it. Like, okay, yeah, he's a horn dog who's in love with me and who's obsessed with me. You know what? That means that I can manipulate him, and she does cheerfully. She
Yes,
doesn't roll her eyes at him like a fucking girl boss, right?
right.
Because that would be stupid.
Listen,
She has a lap
yes. She listen,
plate to do whatever she wants.
listen. M- Grumpy millennial woman isn't a character trait, but sensitive young man is. Brooke is a sensitive young man. Let me
Yes.
tell you. Let me tell you, he's a sensitive young man.
They
People
made
don't know.
Nami a grumpy millennial woman. I didn't like it. I will say this about Netflix One Piece
Mm.
though. It has one great thing, and that's the Buggy the Clown episode. Absolute 10 of 10 episode. Perfect, no notes.
It's because
Uh
Buggy the Clown is great.
Buggy the Clown is great, and the Netflix version of Buggy the Clown was a perfect adaptation. That whole episode is like honestly makes the entire show. The whole rest of the show is mediocre. Um, with occasional good moments, I will say. But Buggy the Clown episode is 10 of 10.
Mm.
And that is where I will end it. It has nothing to do with our original point. I just wanted to talk about that.
No, no, it kind of is. Uh, it's about the characters. Buggy does have a lot of character in the manga, where as in the course of the events, he gets more of a spine. He tells people who are actively torturing him that he's going to be king of the pirates. All these other things like he's feuding with Shanks, who everyone agrees is probably the single strongest man who isn't a part of who isn't an admiral level or above in the world government. Like there's and even though he's an absolute weakling, he like rolled with Goldie Roger back in the day. Everyone's like freaking out, but no, he's just a silly little guy. He's just a goofy guy. He's a guy in a clown outfit that will kill you and everyone you love for a laugh. Um, there's character there, like, and how do I want to put it? Character isn't knowing every little backstory detail. Nobody cares what Buggy was doing in between being Goldie Rogers, cabin boy with Shanks, and building his pirate crew. All this stuff that people talk about, these professors and characters, you don't actually have to care. You don't need Sauron managing orcs for 1,000 years as a weird ghost eye. Nobody cares about that. What's Sauron's, forget Aragorn's tax policy. He's clearly a solid 10 and forget it kind of, got 10% and forget kind of guy. Um, no, absolutely not. What's Sauron's tax policy? How does he manage the orcs? Well, what would like? I don't even think George R. R. Martin could do that. Well, he rules by fear. Yeah, what does that look like? The Nazgul weren't with him the entire time. He was just a weird ghost eye. While they were doing things natural to orcs. Orcs destroy everything they touch. What do you mean, George R. R. Martin? Their characters just anyway. Like the whole that whole thing was just kind of uh you know that whole thing was just kind of dumb, as we all know, and we've made fun of several times already. But it's like when it comes to the character work, when it comes to all these things people say about, oh, is this a good character, is this a good characterization, in the end what makes sense is whatever's cromulent to the character that you're putting forward. It has to work together holistically. The more holistic it is to the character, even if you skip over kind of important things, different events in their lives, it'll create something that people will remember, like Buggy the Clown and all these other guys. Funny little guys doing funny little things. In things like One Piece and whatever novel you're in, you're reading, things like the Nightland. Nobody actually cares what the training regimen for a Nightland adventurer is. They just know that they've trained for it their entire lives. Do we need to see a multi-page description of them crawling inch by inch on their fingertips across a frozen a fridge, that mimics the Nightland outside. That would actually slow down the story, take away from the menace. Um, that would destroy some of the tension that you could build up in an ideal Nightland story. Um, yeah. I need to next week we're getting closer to Christmas. And I'm gonna try and get a guest on. We'll see. Um, but essentially, Christmas weekend, there will probably not be a episode because I'll be involved in Anthony's wedding, and I don't feel like streaming from my hotel. Uh,
Fair.
it's just eh. Eh.
Yeah.
There's also things going on that I'm just not quite sure where they'll go with it. Um, but just don't worry about it. Relax. I'm gonna try and stream Wednesday and Thursday. Certainly Wednesday, I think. We'll just go through it. Sorry, there can't be much more definite things. It's not like we're VTubers here. There's no anime feet. Sorry. Move along, perverts. I bet you like
Freak.
your characters. I bet you like your characters fully fleshed out, just with backstories and everything, motivations.